He was already familiar with the lifestyle and the type of people he would run into. These people that knew how to travel on the water in these catamarans and canoes. Yeah, he'd met many of these people before, so he was well schooled in how to approach and proper protocol when meeting with these people. So he starts off in 1777 under King George III in England. And he heads, he's actually a young captain. He's about, what, 30 something? He's in his late 30s, but he's well respected. He's got a lot of, his family, of course, were all seamen. His grandfather was a captain and in the naval, in the British Naval Academy. And so, well represented individual, and so he gets the task of heading south for King George III to establish trade goods with all these different places. And he was well known because he took care of his men, and he took care of the ships. He wasn't like some of the other captains. They had a problem pulling in and out of these channels in these foreign countries. They would damage the ship. Captain Cook had his own theory in pulling in and out of these various places. So he was a good captain and well respected. His first officer on this journey on the Resolution, he has two ships as he leaves England, the Resolution and the Discovery. And on the Resolution, his first officer is, of course, William Bligh. You may have heard of William Bligh. Mutiny on the Bounty. He later on he had his own ship, and he went to Tahiti to pick up all the breadfruit so he could go to the Caribbean and feed the slave trade for England. Yeah, and but he ran into trouble in Tahiti because he didn't expect the women of Tahiti to be so beautiful, and they were there too long. His men got too comfortable, and that's where you had Mutiny on the Bounty. But anyway, we won't talk about William Bligh. We'll talk about Captain Cook. He starts off 1777, heads down to South Point, Cape Town, Africa, and then and all these places that I mentioned. He's well documented, and of course they've got monuments with all the trading and first British arrival in the area. He was always recognized as the first British arrival. And so from Cape Town, Africa, he mosey's on over to the Madagascar, and then from Madagascar heads south around Sydney, Australia. Comes up around the Cape, goes to New Caledonia, and then he New Caledonia, where he goes from there. Oh yeah, the South Pacific Islands. He starts off with Rotorua, heads over to Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, and then finally far east to Tahiti at the end of the Polynesian Triangle there in the South Pacific. And in Tahiti, he's well receptive. He's able to refurbish his ship with food and supplies, and of course, fresh drinking water. And fill up all the barrels on the ship with fresh drinking water. He wants to attempt to cross the Pacific Ocean and head towards Anchorage, Alaska. He understands that this is a journey that's probably going to take him about 3 weeks to do. He's concerned because they don't really have enough water to make it the total distance. But they're hoping, again, to run into some kind of rainstorm so that they can recoup their drinking water supply. Yeah? But within 2 weeks, he's off course about 500 miles to the west. And he ends up spotting or landing on the southern end of Kauai. Now he's delighted though when he finds out that they have when they land, he runs into native people, and that they have a great and they're nice, and they're treat him with courtesy. They're not violent at any kind, and they welcome him in, and they have a good water supply. So now he starts to put two and two together and starts to realize he just landed in these islands that have a great food resource and water, and this is the only set of islands that are probably the most isolated in the world. He doesn't know of any other islands that are like this in the middle of the Pacific. The closest neighbor is California, 2,500 miles away. Japan's even further, and Europe is even further, over 3,000 miles. So he puts two and two together, and he starts to realize, hey, this becomes a great refurbishing area for the ships, as well as a military strategic point for Britain. So now he's all tickled pink, right? He's found something that is worth its weight in gold. But he wants to continue his journey to Alaska. And so within a week and a half, he's in Anchorage. He spends 24 hours in Anchorage, Alaska. And then he turns around and heads back to the longitude and latitude of Kauai. So he lands in Kauai in January of 1778. Now at this point, he wants to spend a year in these islands. He wants to go through each of these islands and find what kind of resources they have. So he tells his seamate, or his attendant at that time, who is George Vancouver. Now, George Vancouver will get quite the reputation in the future, and some of you may have heard of him. In fact, they name quite a few places: Vancouver, Washington, of course, Canada, Vancouver. And he actually, in the future, he comes back and he gets his own ship, and he's one of the first British ships to actually make a name for himself in the North America continent. And so, but at this time, he's only a 20-year-old what they call a seamate. He's under the direction of Captain Cook. So he starts a journal for Captain Cook, which it records all the information they need. And in this journal, it's actually entitled "The Voyages of Captain Cook Through the Pacific Ocean." And in this record, you'll find all his information regarding his contact with these native people here in what Captain Cook refers to as the Sandwich Islands. Sandwich Islands gets this name from Earl Sandwich, who's a duke in England, who actually gave a lot of sponsorship to Captain Cook when he left England. And so on behalf of Earl Sandwich, he names the islands after the Earl by calling it the Sandwich Island. And so it's recorded as that in this journal. And like I said, he spends a month on each of the islands. He and actually records all the resources available, the lifestyle, the native people, and also their culture and their way of life and their food resources. And they are able to pick up a few of the young Hawaiians who want to come aboard, and they want to learn about colonialism, British lifestyle. And so he takes them on board as they travels from one island to the other. And Vancouver takes advantage of this when they bring on native people, because he wants to learn the language, and so that he can further advance the British understanding of and communicate with these native people. So he takes the opportunity to actually learn the language. So they leave Kauai after a month, and they continue on one island so they go to Oahu, spend a month there, and then keep doing this as they continue down the island chain. So by the time he arrives here, he comes around the South Point over here, and this is like a year later. He's in Hawaii, and he comes at a time when the native people here are having a celebration. during the months of December and January, they have a tradition where they honor the god Lono, which is a deity, and they call this festivity the Makahiki Festival. Now, the Makahiki Festival is to honor the god Lono. This god is responsible for the well-being of the resources and for the health of the native people. So in other words, during the year, if they had a lot of food resources, no one got sick, they had no disease, no major earthquakes or tsunamis or lava flows destroying any part of their village, they would pay homage and they would thank the god Lono for these good times. And by doing so, committing themselves to this practice of this Makahiki festival, this would kind of ensure them that the following year they would continue to have this type of success. None of the kids would get sick, the people would be healthy, and they would continue to take advantage of their abundant resources. And so Captain Cook is out in the bay and he's pulling